Hey guys, I get questions all the time from parents asking what their role is in a meeting, how they can prepare for the meeting, what they should be doing after the meeting. So I wanted to come to you guys today and talk to you guys a little bit about how you can prep before, during, and after the meeting. So we're talking about IEP meetings, but this also can apply to 504 meetings and any kind of school meeting you're having at school, whether that is a follow-up meeting or a behavior intervention plan meeting. A lot of these tips will apply to all of those things. So first and foremost, you guys hear me say it all the time, before you go into a meeting, you want to ask for a draft copy. And this draft copy should be any kind of written information. The team is at home and they're prepping the IEP, so they're prepared for their meeting, just like you're preparing for their meeting. So you want to have all that information to kind of absorb before you walk into the meeting. But you should also be asking for any kind of copies of any kind of data, any kind of evaluations or things like that. All of that is important for you to come to the table as an equal team member. You're also going to want to grab your IEP checklist. If you're following my page, you guys all probably have it. If not, I will leave a note or a link in the comments for you guys to go ahead and grab it. But the IEP checklist is going to give you a list of questions that you can ask during your meeting that will kind of help you dig a little bit deeper and really understand what's going on. Excuse me. You're also going to want to create your parent input statement. And if you don't have a copy of my parent input statement as a model, leave me a note below and I will get that for you guys also. But the parent input statement is your opportunity to be an expert. So when you go to the table, everybody kind of gets their chance to speak all around the table, right? Like the OT says, here's what I think, here's what your child's strengths are, here's what we're still working on. The speech path says the same thing. The gen ed teacher says the same thing. So the parent input statement is your chance to be the expert. So you want to make sure that you're preparing that. A parent input statement doesn't have to be anything excessive or long. It should really be like one page at most. A lot of the times parents will choose to bullet point things just because it makes it a little bit easier. It's really hard as a parent to not be emotional, right? But we want to kind of make the parent input statement fact-based. Here's drawing. You want to draw a picture of your child and what they're good at, what they struggle with. So my parent input statement that I hand out to people kind of is divided up into like 4 or 5 different categories. And we talk about what your goals are for your child, what your concerns are for your child, how they learn best, what they like, what are their motivators, and things that are a struggle for them or things that make things hard for them. All of those kinds of things can be included in this parent input statement, and then it will be included in that formal IEP document so that everybody who comes in contact with your child knows what your goals are, what your concerns are, what works for them, what doesn't, what motivates them. So those are the ways that you can prep for your meeting. Ask for a draft, grab your IEP checklist, parent input statement, and then you're also going to want to list your questions out. Now, I am old school paper and pencil kind of girl, and I like to print out the IEP and like jot my notes down on it. So that way when we're going through the IEP draft in the meeting, I can kind of say, okay, this is a good time for me to ask about this sort of thing. Helps me stay organized. But if you are an electronic kind of person, there's no reason that you can't type up your notes or whatever works for you. That's just kind of how I choose to do it. So now during the meeting, bring a friend, guys. Like, it can be the mailman, it can be me, but it can be a friend, it can be your husband, it can be your wife. It doesn't matter. Bring somebody else. A second set of ears sitting on your side of the table is really important to helping you have that confidence in a meeting to kind of ask for what you want and get it, right? Like, we don't want to walk into a meeting feeling insecure or unsure of ourselves. We want to be confident, and having a buddy, using that buddy system really works well, but it also helps you after the meeting to kind of recap what happened. Like, what do you think of this? And it's a second voice also. So they're asking questions that maybe you weren't thinking of. So bringing a friend is within your rights. You're allowed to bring a support person with you. I absolutely recommend doing that. I still bring people with me sometimes times when I'm feeling extra emotional about things, especially if it's somebody who isn't emotionally connected to this. It's a really good thing because they're looking at things from a different perspective than a parent would. Ask all your questions in the meeting and then ask more questions as you go along. Do not be afraid you're asking too many questions. And if you are not sure, dig deeper and ask more. Ask for clarification. Ask for the data to support whatever change they're making. Like, okay, so we want to do X, Y, and Z. Why are we taking those steps? Why do we feel like that is the right path to take? What's our next step? What is our goal going to be by completing this annual goal? When you're looking at annual goals, you want to make sure that they are applicable to like real life down the road. So IDEA law says specifically that we need to set our children up for further education, independent living, and employment. So when you're looking at your annual goals, you kind of want to make sure that they are touching on one of those three areas. And ask yourself, in real life, where do I use this skill more than twice a month? If you're not using this skill in real life and people you know aren't using this skill in real life, maybe it's not something that we should be focusing on in the IEP. So we want to really prioritize what is important for your child to learn now. What stepping stone do they need now so they can get to those goals that you wrote down in your parent input statement. Excuse me, I have this cough that will not go away. It's been like weeks now and it's super annoying. So again, during the meeting, bring a friend, ask questions, dig deeper, and ask for clarification. Ask for the data to support any kind of changes if you're unsure, and take notes. After the meeting and during the meeting, let the team know that you want to take all this home and review it. By law, you have 10 days to agree or disagree to the IEP. Now, some states are going to have you sign the IEP. States like Illinois do not have you sign at the end. So you do need to kind of vocalize that you want to take this home and review it, and see what other questions you might have when you get home. Because how many times do you sit at that table and you're like, yeah, that all sounds great. And then you go home and you're like, I didn't ask that question, or why are we doing that? Or what's the goal of this? Or, you come up with more questions at home afterwards. So always take that home and kind of review it. And that is one thing that you can do afterwards. I asked you guys to be taking notes during the IEP. I want you guys to review the IEP notes with what notes you took. The IEP team is just human, right? So sometimes they miss things, or they misinterpret things, or they write them down incorrectly. It happens to the best of us. So by you taking notes and then comparing them to the notes, you make sure that the IEP document is really accurate to the meeting that you have. I can't tell you how many times the parent will be like, yeah, we talked about that in the IEP meeting, but it's not in the notes. And it's not necessarily that it was done on purpose. We're just human and sometimes things get forgotten, right? So you want to make sure you're comparing those notes. Another way that you can feel more comfortable with the big changes that were made in a meeting is scheduling a follow-up meeting. I always recommend that if there are things you're not comfortable with or big changes being made, we schedule a follow-up meeting within 6 to 8 weeks after the IEP. And that will kind of depend on the school year. So if you have an IEP meeting at the end of the year, 6 weeks into school might not give you enough data for those new changes. So 8 weeks would be maybe more ideal for that. So, but you want to kind of touch base just to see, what the progress is. Is this working? Do we need to tweak this at all? What's going well? What are we struggling with? Those kind of things. And a follow-up meeting also allows you to feel more involved in that team. Because what happens is that especially when kids get older and teachers aren't communicating a ton with parents because we're trying to put that independence on kids, parents aren't really sure about what exactly is going on at school. So these follow-up meetings allow you to feel more like an equal team member so that you don't go a year without really touching base on what progress you're making. So that is definitely an option for you guys. We talked about 10 days. You have 10 days to agree or disagree, but you have to do it in writing. So email the school and say, yeah, I agree with this. Please move forward. Or or no, I don't agree with this. The notes were missing this. Can you add this? Or now that I'm thinking about it, I really don't like that change to the behavior intervention plan. Can we brainstorm some other things that we can do? The last tip I'm going to give you for after the meeting is asking a friend or me or somebody to review the IEP document so that they can ask questions also, and get a second opinion. So that is one of the things that I do for families. When you go to the doctor and they give you a diagnosis, you ask for a second opinion. But when you go to school and they give you all these things that your child needs to be working on, nobody asks for a second opinion. And that doesn't mean the school's doing anything wrong or you maybe didn't feel comfortable. The school can be doing everything right and you can feel totally comfortable, and you might still need a second opinion because I am an unbiased set of eyes. I'm thinking about this not from a classroom's perspective, not from a district perspective, but just after talking to you and figuring out what your goals are. I am very student focused in that second opinion. So it's just a second set of eyes for everybody. So after the meeting, compare notes with your IEP, schedule a follow-up. You have 10 days to agree or disagree in writing and ask for a second opinion. I can't tell you guys that enough. So that is kind of my IEP tips for today, and I will talk to you guys soon.